Greetings and blessed love, everybody.
There's no audio. There's no audio. There's no audio from anybody.
No audio.
No audio. Can't hear the other guys. There's no audio from anybody.
No audio.
No audio. Can't hear the other guys.
Or if everything else is okay. But books for me, wow. I think what really made it happen for me at a very young age was the fact that my mommy actually had a good friend, or maybe her best friend at the time, was working at the library. And it wasn't even a local library, it was a library in a small like outskirt town from where we lived. And so every now and then my mommy, she had to go and visit her friend who was working in the library. And then, we would go to the library and the two of them would sit together and have coffee and, have long chats. And I was just there by myself in the library. And so I could every few weeks, like I would have an entire afternoon, basically just by myself, like wandering around this library. And that is really what sparked my interest and my love for books. And so, even thinking back now, like it's like really fond memories that that I hold on dearly, because it really started me on that journey of just loving books and of being influenced by books. And I remember myself, looking at the children books, and then, as I grew a little older, like, venturing around and look at the science books, and like every afternoon after, they would be finished with a coffee chat. Basically, I would come to the desk, and I had like a huge, like stack of books, and I wanted to carry all of them, like, and I had to have like several baskets to fill them. And then I knew I had a few weeks, to read through all of them. before I had to return them. And then I would actually start to have little notebooks where I would write like when I would what the day I started to read a book and the day I finished it. And then I kind of had competitions with myself, like how many books I could manage to read. And my mommy would be surprised, and so it would be like like a little competition, like a little game with myself, like where I tried to impress myself and others, by how many books I could read, and I kept track of them. But that was kind of like the entry point for me and books that along, and with my family, reading books to me from very early age on. And yeah, but that's really how I fell in love with books, and how I found like a huge array of books of different themes that influenced me ultimately.
Yeah, I'll say that from my point of view, in regard to books, I was probably much like Willow. I didn't want to read books. I didn't want like pictures were so much easier. But back in my era, when I was a kid, uh, we didn't even have VCRs back then. And so, like, if you wanted to know about something, you had to go to the library to like find out what that was about. There was no like searching on the internet or anything like that. So there was that resource, and
Thanks.
to some degree,
Mm,
I did. I had a curious mind about stuff. So a lot of the stuff, my mother had a set of encyclopedias, and so I used to ride motorcycles a lot. So just like in the wintertime when there's nothing else to do, um, you got to come up with something to entertain yourself. And so certainly like investigating some of the things that I was interested in started kind of with encyclopedias. And, it's not necessarily, that isn't very exciting when it comes to reading. But I started to learn a lot about a lot of different things. And over a period of time, that just, I also had an interest in the military and stuff like that. And that kind of translated into first starting to learn about the battles and stuff like that, but then actually reading the accounts of the battles and the different, books that were written on those type of things. And, some of the main characters, George Patton and MacArthur, and a lot of the stuff from World War II. Of course, there was a lot of movies on that stuff. But again, in the 70s, there was no internet, there was no VCRs. If you saw like a movie on George Patton or something like that on the TV, it was broadcast and then it was gone. And so like if I wanted to know more about George Patton, the only thing I could do is go to the library and pick up a book on George Patton and read it. And so to me, that's kind of how I got interested in reading. But it really wasn't until actually reading John Taylor Gatto's book, The Underground History of American Education, which this is actually a later version. This is volume one of like the second go round of John Taylor Gatto's work. But in this particular book, he talks about how critical thinking is really developed largely by reading. And I think it was who's the guy that came to the French guy that came to the United States in like 1835. I don't recall his name, but essentially he went around and surveyed Americans back in like 1835, and the literacy rate was like incredible because he would ask people about like difficult subjects like that were like contemporary books, like The Last of the Mohicans was one in particular. But it was like everybody had read the book, like everybody, the slaves, the prisoners, everybody was literally up to speed on reading. And then you look at what happened over the next 100 or so years, and he kind of points to draft, uh, like they tested people during the draft for like the Spanish American War, World War One, World War Two, and the cognitive reading ability for the average draftee continued to decline over the years until like by 1996 there's only about 3 or 4% of the population that actually has the cognitive ability of reading and kind of having a critical thinking ability that they had like back in 1835. And so to me, that was just like, oh my God, I've got to start reading. I've got to start reading everything that I can, you know. And probably for the past 4 or 5 years, I've read as many books as I can get my hands on, and I'll read PDF copies. I'll listen to books on tape. I get anything and everything that I can. And certainly there is a lot of information out there that it isn't in the movies, it isn't on the TV shows, it isn't in the documentaries, but it's there, and it tells a hell of a lot different story than what you're getting, what most people are getting.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's so true. While you were talking, I was even reminded of, um, like because I went back to my childhood, and yet this thing with the library, that was big. But I really can see now like how even like my family environment, just the habit of reading, before going to bed, like reading a story to us as the children, to me and my siblings, and those were like really. Wow, I wasn't even, remembering that actively, but now it comes back, and that created like an atmosphere, of, being safe, being at home, and also like it did something to inspire me to, the kind of, um, it's not, the English word isn't fantasy. In Germany we say fantasy. It's the kind of inspiration that you get, like it seems to open your mind to the creativity, the things, the stories that you can imagine, the kind of worlds that you can dive into, trying to imagine yourself how the characters of a book, how they might look like. And like later on, when I was also exposed to more like screen time or TV, like I was always, when I saw the movie that I had written the book about, I was always in a way like disappointed because it was that doesn't look like, it was in my mind. I had imagined it, and it's so much more dull in a way. Yeah, it had like special effects and stuff, but it was as if, I was watching somebody else's vision of the as the vision that I had created in my own mind. And yeah, and actually, just while you were talking, Mike, I remembered a series of books that my grandfather actually gave to me, and I'm going to jump up and get one of them just in a little moment. And I'm sure you have that in English as well. In Germany, they're called Prince Eisenherz. That would mean Prince Ironheart. You ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
It's it's like it's like medieval Europe, actually the medieval world basically, and it's a story of a Prince Ironheart, who who would grow up and travel the world and live through various adventures. And I think there's even like a cartoon series here by that name, which is like way like years and years old. And those were like 10 like thick books, and they had like beautiful drawings in them, like almost like a cartoonish style. So it was like always like the half of the page was like drawing, and the other half was the text. And those really were like, wow, that was like my word. I dived into that like for months, and I reread them. And the funny thing is, like, now having children myself again, I kind of relive some of those moments, because now I'm the one who is reading to my children. And even some of the books that I would have, held on to, and that they were still in like a box somewhere like back there or in my room actually, like I take them out, and I take tremendous pleasure now in reading to my own children from those books. And that's a way of kind of reliving also my past. And it's really joyful to see how the books that I read to my children now, that really inspired me, also have the same impact on my children now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Willow, let's talk about your set of books.
Which one? Like, which set would you like?
Up to you.
um,
Where do you want to start?
so let me think. I'd say the first series that I really got really hooked on was, I probably should have put these a little closer. The Narnia series. I was obsessed with the Chronicles of Narnia. It was one of the first like really big series that I read. My favorite book in this series is actually called A Horse and His Boy. And I kind of wish that I had gone over a summary of it. Actually, let me look up a summary right now. I accidentally canceled that out. So, A Horse and His Boy is about a young servant boy who is raised by a fisherman, and he's treated really badly. So I can't remember the exact reason, but he ends up escaping. He just leaves and he takes his horse and sorry, I'm looking up the summary of it. And his boy. So he makes it out of this bad situation and he realizes that his horse can talk. And his horse is actually stolen from Narnia. And it's one of the talking beasts of Narnia, which if you've ever read the series, it's a common theme. There are certain animals who can talk, and then there's the dumb animals who can't speak. I really liked this book because, as usual, it's about a young person who's in a really awful situation. They're not being treated correctly, and they have to get out, and they have to suffer basically really dire circumstances, and they're tested over and over again, and they go through like the worst case scenario where they really just think that they need to give up, and they somehow find the strength to deal with it and keep moving, which is actually a really common theme in all of my books. The Inheritance Cycle series, which is the Aragon series. I know some people have heard of the movie, which I don't, what's the word? I don't like, and I don't consider it an actual part of the series. It was a bad remake of the entire series. That one is about a young boy who is an orphan. He's raised by his uncle, and he finds this stone in the woods, and come to find out it's a dragon. And it hatches for him, which is a really rare occasion. These eggs don't just hatch for anyone. They have to pick their rider. And he's bestowed, magic is bestowed on him. And then he tries to use the magic, and then he almost kills himself because he's dumb and arrogant. And he gets a really harsh teacher who's like, you have to learn this, and we're going to put you through all these tribulations and trials. And as a reader, you actually have to sit there and go through the tribulations and trials. You feel it as you're reading it. The style of the writing is meant to give you the experience that it's trying to convey through words. And then, of course, I was obsessed with Harry Potter. I am one of those adults who could probably quote you the entire series. But yeah, those are my 3 top favorites, and I do have Lord of the Rings up in here, but not gonna lie, I haven't finished it because there's a certain part of the second book that I just can't get through, which psychologically is kind of telling because it's the part where everyone gets lost in the lost forest, the endless forest where you just can't get out of. And I was like, oh, okay. So psychologically, that's kind of where I am. I feel like I've ranted a lot.
We're all doing that. It's kind of part of the deal.
I just jumped out and I found the
Yeah, well, in regard to just being a reader, how does that translate into like other people reading? Dennis, you kind of mentioned this with your family and essentially kind of creating kind of an atmosphere of reading. But do you notice, like, with other people, with friends, with associates and stuff like that, how little reading is done these days? How little the emphasis? Like, if it isn't made into a movie, then nobody's going to talk about the newest book that's out there.
Big time. I thought about that while we were talking and giving us the numbers and the facts of the time that people actually read, or you said the draftees that were tested for the reading ability, and I without even knowing the study, I completely agree that would be my subjective how would you say, what I perceive, my perception, right, as well. And even for myself too, because there was a moment when I was like, wow, when was the last time I actually read? And you know, I could see myself there as well when you mentioned, you know, that at a certain point, you know, a few years back ago, you also were like, oh God, I have to read, you know, so much, and I have to go get back into that. And that's what I did as well. And even, you know, like right now it's much better for me, but I had this, yeah, also this perception of life that things just sped up, and that there's so much other things taking up space. You know, there's the internet now, and then before that it was VCR, and it was like movies and TV. And I'm really thankful to, and really grateful to my parents that they restricted heavily, like in my early childhood, in my going into my youth as well, the use of, well, TV. At that time we didn't have internet then, but yeah, like I could I rebelled against it a lot, and but at the same time I could see how that probably saved me, you know, from a lot of foolishness. And of course there was like a pushback afterwards, where then, okay, now I'm old enough, now I can decide for myself, or when I had a chance, then I, you know, would kind of binge watch like for hours and kind of try to make up for what I thought I had lost. But now I can really see where they were coming from, and yeah, how that really gave me time. And yeah, I think every month, every year, you know, of in the life of a child, that they are not like overly exposed to screen time, and nowadays to I don't know, Netflix and cell phones and stuff. I think that's like a huge win on the side of the parents, because you give the mind so much more time to develop. And yeah, so it's like you're spot on with that. And now like it's a struggle even for me, you know, to find some time and to make it, you know, not the last thing of the day to do, but to actually give it the importance it deserves to read a book, you know, to set to schedule some time aside. So okay, there's a half an hour here, there's a 50 minutes there, and you actually sit down and read and give, you know, quality time, quality reading time to yourself. It's a gift to yourself, really. And not just do it like at the end of the day when you're almost passing out anyway, and then after the first two pages, like you're gone. So yeah, I think that's I think that is a an important practice that we should go for. And saying that, I just jumped out earlier and I got the first of this 10 book series of Prince Eisenherz, Prince Ironheart, and that would be it right here. And then, so those were like, that was a huge influence from my youth. And you see there's like a bunch of pictures on every side, on every page. And it really, yeah, that was really inspirational to me. And up to now, like I have fond memories of my grandfather, you know, who gave those to me. It's like a huge, it was like, wow, it was a big gift. It was 10 of those books, and they're like, I read through them, and then I had to read them again. By the time I reached the last one, I forgot the first one, so I had to read it again. So yeah, and then just coming back, you know, was it 2 years now from Jamaica, and having been close to those books again and rereading them basically at that age, it I like I can relive some of those moments of my early childhood, which is really nice and pleasureful.
How about you, Willow? Uh, Friends, associates, people, do you find a lot of readers amongst them?
Um, I would say, yeah, a lot of my close friends are avid readers, mostly fantasy novels, because one of my favorite parts about reading a series is getting to talk to other people who have read the series. So then you can relate, and you can almost like share this whole other world and share your perceptions of it, and share like, what do you think this meant? You can like talk about it like with a friend. It's really addicting. Actually, my very favorite series, I don't know anybody else that's ever read it. And so I will literally like lend it out to people, and I'm like, will you please read this, so I have someone to like talk to about it, because I need a friend in the fandom. Um, but to be honest, a lot of my newer friends, like since I got out of high school and since I became a little bit more mature, they're kind of more interested in stuff like John Taylor Gatto and you know, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Although The Body Keeps the Score, that's right up my alley too, and that's not at all fantasy, but it was every bit as influential as any of my fantasy books, to be honest. So I'm kind of like getting that balance between escaping into a fantasy world and learning information about this world that is sometimes just as magical and crazy adventurous as any of my fantasy novels that I've been obsessed with.
You said you read the Harry Potter series.
Yes.
What do you think about the difference between the books and the movie, and what did you notice as the difference? Do you like the movies
So
and how they portray the characters?
the very first movie, I think they worked really hard to put as much detail in it as possible, which, the movie turned out to be like 2.5 hours long. And it is the smallest book out of the entire series. I don't know if you can see this, but this little red one right here, that's the first one. And this yellow one is the last one. That was split into two movies. Um, about, I'd say here, the fourth book, they completely butchered half of it. It really upset me. There was a whole section, there was a whole bunch of themes that they just skipped on that made the whole series about Harry Potter trying to battle Voldemort. And that's actually not what made the series really good. It was all of the experiences that Harry Potter and his friends had, despite him being a child having to possibly battle like the most evil wizard of all time. The whole world around it was the detail of the world and the interactions between the characters was not nearly as in depth in the movie as it was the books. And to be honest, past book 3, I consider the series and the movie series to be two separate works of art. They're both fantastic. I love the movies. I will watch them. And sometimes it bugs me because I will mix up what happened in the movie and what happened in the book. And I really kind of like hate on myself sometimes because I'm like, I've read all the books. I know exactly what's supposed to happen, and I fell in love with them before I even saw the movie. But sometimes it is nice to have that mental image of like where everyone else can also go into the same mental image and see a world just the same as you do. Um,
So Willow, as somebody who was exposed to both, to someone who has not seen any of the movies nor read any of the books, what would you recommend?
read the books. Read the books first,
I
because
think
once you watch the movie, your image of what actually goes on is sorry, I just realized one of my biggest issues, I'm gonna have to look it up just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure whenever Harry Potter gets his cake, so he gets, this Hagrid wizard comes into his hidey hole, place, this cabin in the ocean where they're trying to get away. He finds them and he brings Harry Potter a cake. And the cake is actually spelled in the movie, it's spelled happy birthday with like the day is spelled DAE. And in the book, Hagrid's not that stupid. He wrote it all and he was very proud because he was like, I made sure to spell all that correctly. That was one of my biggest criticisms of the entire series, is that they made one of my favorite characters seem really dumb.
okay. I think what happened to me actually is, I'd never heard of the books, but of course, like the whole hype around the movie or the movies that came out, like I noticed that, but at that point of my life, like I was already, how would you say, heavily uh, disgusted by certain blockbusters in certain
Yeah.
like movies, and the stuff that they put in there, not only the advertising but also like the programming basically. So I was like, I was already in a place where I was like, it actually it drove me away. It didn't make me want to watch it because I just saw it as, without seeing it, like just a few series or the commercial there, like everybody's running for it, everybody, this one, that one, Harry Potter, no, no, no. And I was like, no, that can't be for me. So I wonder if that is even planned as well, to then
Could be.
like to commercialize it and to water it down and to make it something completely different from what it was. Which in the case of Harry Potter, I can't say because I haven't been exposed to both of them fully. But yeah, so that's something that happened to me, like especially like with movies and with mainstream blockbuster movies. Like at a certain point in my life, it was just I didn't even want to watch it because I kept analyzing it and I kept seeing things that were put in there like on purpose or to create certain to influence in a certain way, which I don't think is always in the best way, or for the best of the viewer, so to say. So that made it hard in a way. Look what I found as well. That was my early childhood too.
Oh
I
my
think it's
gosh,
called,
Dennis the Menace.
yes, exactly. so that had a little impact on my life as well. And then I found these two, which is one of the German translations from John Taylor Gattu's work, and it's called Verdummt nochmal.
Wow.
So it's
Dumbing us down, isn't it?
yeah, but it doesn't literally translate into that. Verdammt nochmal would mean like damned in English, like
Okay.
damn it, damn. And so they, they made a play on words and said verdummt nochmal, which is like dommed, like with a U. I think you could more or less pick up on the play of words in English as well. And yeah, like I found another example of because the show is called Influential Books from Our Past. So one of the books that really influenced me heavily at a later part of my life was this, and this is actually part of a series of books by Michael Reynolds, and they have a few years already, like on their back, so to say, and they're like, those are the first series of books on airships that Michael Reynolds, an architect from the States, published. And when I heard of, I think his movie was called Garbage Warrior, and you can see like how he uses car tires and builds houses, completely self-sufficient, independent houses that provide food and water and shelter, and recycle gray and black water, and have wind turbines and solar panels. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. That blew me away. And through those books and a few online videos, I was actually able to gain enough knowledge and confidence to try it out myself and to build like a small airship myself. And those literally this book right here was what I drove around with it like for quite a few years, and I had it in my backpack, and it was raining, and sun was shining, and sometimes it was in the middle of the night under the full moon, and I was like with a flashlight like looking at the drawings, and literally like be out there like in the bush and building this airship. And that's really that stood for something in my life that made me see things with different eyes, because like, wow, through these houses it's like it's possible to live in a totally different way than the way I had been taught and I had perceived so far. Because if you have a house that gives you all those things that you need for basic survival, then wow, like, so once I would have a house like that, it would be tremendously difficult. It would be difficult for somebody to tell me I would have to slave away in some kind of meaningless job for the rest of my life just to provide food and to provide rent money. But it's like, wow, that's amazing. It's possible to live, and maybe we're meant to live in a way that we don't have to spend the greatest amount of time of our life running down a paycheck. And that kind of it was a change of perception of many things in life for me, and that was marked also through those books. Did you guys have some kind of books or that really that triggered like a shift for you, like a major shift in your life, or that influenced you in a way that it wasn't just, oh, that's a funny idea, but it's like, wow, it opens up a totally new way of perceiving life?
Yeah, I would say again, it's John Taylor Gatto's book. I recall there's a chapter 15 out of his original Underground History of American Education is about him kind of like his first day as a teacher and kind of discovering that the system doesn't work the way that he thought it does. And reading that, I had always had issues with a lot of the things because I worked in the military and then I worked in the corporate world. And there was a lot of things about those experiences that I couldn't figure out why, like, for example, the stupider people, the more evil people were at the top and the smarter people were kind of on the fringes, and I couldn't understand like why was that. And it was that book, that chapter, that when I was done with it, I was like, whoa, I understand now. I understand why things are screwed up, and to me, that just blew my mind. And it's certainly one of the reasons that John Taylor Gatto is such an influential person in my life, and certainly should be in a lot of other people's lives. I think that's one of the reasons that autonomy caught my attention, was because of Richard's, um, association with John Taylor Gatto. Um, that I definitely jumped on board. But I don't think there's anything that I've ever read from John Taylor Gatto that I disagree with, and it's just the way that he has written his books, the way that he describes his own writing. In fact, that's one of the things with I think it's the interview with Richard, the history lesson with John Taylor Gatto. That initial part of the interview, he talks about like how he goes about writing, and he writes things the first time, then he goes through them and kind of logically and that analyzes the words that he's printed. And in a lot of cases, he changes those words. And to me, that's like it's just a very thoughtful and methodical understanding of how important words are, and and how they impact other people, and spending the time to understand that is really so important to us really kind of grasping like how much potential we have in our brains and how much potential we have in ourselves that we dismiss because we allow the words and a lot of the language to be altered and confused by so many people. It is really that creates a lot of the conflict and trouble that we have in the world. Is we don't understand what the words really mean. We don't understand what the message really is, and I'll just stop there.
And subsequently also, we don't know how to put the right words and syllables together in order to, you know, to express what we want to say, and that is artistry in itself. And I feel that
Yes.
is something really amazing. The potential, like the power, the ability to write and to express yourself in a specific way. How that carries your energy, if I use that, and how that is even something that will transcend, mere, how would I say, mere intellectual um, information. So of course, like even the book, like before, or here's another one from Reynolds, like about harvesting water, using water. These like these are like technical things. Okay, there's drawings. Okay, you set it up like this and you catch that, and so on. And it carries an inspiration through the manipulation of physical things. It's like, oh, that's amazing, like, oh, that's, so that opened up a window right there. But the text, the words itself, that's like just, technical, step by step. You build this, build that, put together that wood and cut the tires and pound the dirt in the tires. So that's something. But one of the most memorable moments I had actually with a book was with this one. It's from Patanjali, and it's called the Yoga Sutras. And that's maybe for people who are more into the yogic parts, that's something that would be well known, or it's like really a classic, a very important work of Patanjali. And without even having read like a line of the content of that book, like, just touching it and holding it in my hand, it was like, whoa, like it had, it started to shift things without me even like opening it up. And then after I opened it up, like, and I started reading it, and it's interesting also how some books, you can just open them and you start read them, and like, I don't know, within a day or a few hours, you go right through them, and like just sucks you in. And then other books, it seems like, you have to take your time, and there's a certain time, or where you're supposed to read them, or where you can read it, and sometimes you just read like a half page, and it's like, it takes you somewhere, and then you have to ponder upon it, and sometimes it takes months, but until you pick it up again and you're ready like to read on. And anyway, so this was a book that had an impact that was way beyond just the technical knowledge, and instructions, and intellectual value, so to say, but it went deeper. And I think that is uh, a whole different side of what can be transferred through books. They can touch you they can touch you in your heart. They can, they can touch your emotions, stir up your emotions, and make you sad or make you happy. There can be jokes inside, and there can be, it can stimulate you intellectually, but it also can cut right through, to the, to your soul basically, and inspire you and open up something that, you might not even have knew that was there from before.
All right, Willow, it's your turn. You've
I
been
was
blabbing
actually
away here for a little bit.
I was looking up my favorite quotes from each of the Aragon books, and I found a couple. I didn't find one from the third book, which is okay, because I don't need to talk too much about it. I'm trying to copy and paste it real fast so I can just read it instead of trying to memorize it. So there were a couple of things that I learned from each of these books that helped me navigate the world. I used books as a way of understanding people, understanding complex characters helped me get where people were coming from, what did their body language look like, what were they trying to get across to me, because I struggled with that a lot in my childhood. That's a common symptom of trauma, is where you really don't pick up on any social cues. So this was like being able to watch characters or watch people in the world without them knowing that I was watching them. And here's just a couple of the important lessons that I really took to heart. In the first book, I don't remember which character it is, but they say, keep in mind that many people have died for their beliefs. It's actually quite common. The real courage is living and suffering for what you believe in. And, coming from a traumatic environment and having to deal with that, of course, there's a lot of people I know who have thought about or actually attempted suicide. And these quotes, this whole series actually helped me realize what it meant to have to deal with something that other people can't understand, that you have to deal with yourself. And actually that leads me to this other quote. This is also from from the last book, and it really stuck with me. It's one of the most influential quotes that I read in the entire series. And it says, "You cannot learn what you are made of if you rely on anyone or anything else to help you." And it was like, at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm really not going to truly know myself until I know how I deal with things, not asking other people for help, not looking to someone else for the answers. And I still do it from time to time. I look to other people for answers. But at the end of the day, I have to know who I am. And I don't know, that quote was, I don't know how it influenced me, but it definitely struck a chord.
Quotes themselves really are amazing, and what really got me onto that was this book here, which is from Yiddu Krishnamurti. Did you hear of him before?
No.
Can't say I do.
Super, well, it's like, to talk about him, probably that would be a topic. That would be another topic by itself. But Yiddu Krishnamurti, and this collection is actually a collection of quotes from him, and it's put together by topics. So there's certain topics on karma, on gurus, on spirituality, on joy, on sexuality, on discipline, and I got my hand on this book, and every page I opened and I just look up a quote, it was like, wow, it hit right home, and it seemed so fitting, like for every time I open it, and like for the moment, and like I found something to relate this quote to what was happening or what's going on in my life at that point. So it was almost spooky sometimes, but that really that triggered my love for quotes. And you guys know that like oftentimes we'll find a quote and we'll put in chime in a few quotes, even like in the show here. And this is the book that triggered that, and made me appreciate quotes and made me look much deeper into his life work. And I think that's something that is an ability to with very few words, or with a few lines, to express like a great idea, or to express something that will connect deeply with the one who reads it. And instead of using many words and an entire book to express something, to just refine that and resume it in like a few lines, and to make it something that doesn't only fit in a situation like in my life right here and right now, but that other people also can take out, and they can see the value of that, and they can apply it to their lives and inspire others likewise. I think that's a great gift.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna talk about one of the books that I think was really influential as far as my business career. One that I think a lot of people that are in business uh, recognize as being important, and that's Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Um, and there's actually a couple subsequent books that I think, I don't know if Napoleon Hill, but it was like a collection of some of his lectures and essays. I think it was called The 17 Principles of Success or something like that, that was influenced by Napoleon Hill. But to me, that brought up a really interesting uh, kind of revelation in regard to, here's a book that really kind of explains how to do business in the world. And yet, like going to college, going to school, none of the stuff, like none of the classes really covered any of the stuff that was like in this very powerful book. And to me, that was like, that's very interesting. Why is it that like this book that's like, I don't know, it was a couple hundred pages and so influential, and a lot of people that are, like Zig Ziglar and some of the other influential business type of people that are out on the circuit would just sing praises of that book, and a lot of them suggest that you read that book every year, because it's so powerful. But yet, none of that information is in the business classes that are so expensive in all these business college and university courses. I don't know. It was very, very telling to me, and certainly brought to my mind, there's definitely something going on here that I'm just not understanding. Well, of course, I learned a little bit more with the John Taylor Gatto book, but that was definitely another one that was a revelation for me.
Yeah, I would agree that, um, and probably even more so today, because we mentioned earlier the digitalization of books, and I know that there's a lot being lost in that process, and it's so much more easier, to drop a few chapters and a few lines out, or to make changes when you transform like a physical book into, like an online document. And I know that like libraries here, they are throwing out books like left, right, and center. The old ones that they whatever they're not needed again, and they're reducing their physical stock of books, and and they're transferring some books into like online media, and there's a lot of audiobooks now as well, which is great, and I've like tremendously enjoyed many like audiobooks, and also the advantage, of course, of having them as a computer file books. That means that you can also get a hand on books that you might, just as you mentioned, that might not be available in your local library. So there's many advantages to it as well. Um, but still, it is uh, it is amazing what one can find if you look into old books. If you go to an how you call it, like an old time bookstore, like of books that are out of print and that are still, really 100-year-old books. Antiquariat, we call it in German. I forgot the English word for it. It's basically like a shop where like old time books are being sold that are not in print again and they're out of print. Or if you go through the library, and yeah, you discover books, and you discover, like topics and themes that that I stumbled upon in libraries. Like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, let me take this book home, and then at home, like I sit down and read, and say, oh, that's amazing. Next time I come back, I get 2, 3 books out of that. And those were things that were, my horizon was kind of opening up, and I opened up windows to worlds that that I would not have access just to what I would have been inspired to do or to read about at school. And so I think it's super important to take self initiative and to go out there and discover for yourself, and not only take as valuable that which others present to you, but other things that you should be reading at this point of your life. And I have another example for a really influential book, which which also had to do something with a quote. Many years back, when I was still in Jamaica, I met a healer, like a wise lady. I'm not sure how to describe her, what name to call, to use to describe her, but she gave me some hints, and that would like guide me for years, and even until today. And one of them was a quote from this book. I'm not sure if you heard about that. In English, it's called The Autobiography of a Yogi. Have you come across that before?
I've heard of that book, but I have not had the pleasure of reading it.
Yeah, it's from Paramahansa Yogananda. And that book, it would take me a little while to get it, and to get it to Jamaica as well. So I had to do something which is what I really was looking forward to, because I was living in Jamaica, and I had only the chance like once per year, sometimes even less often than that, to go back home. And one of the things besides my family that I was longing for so much was the library. So because the National Library in Jamaica is smaller than the library I have in my hometown here, like in Germany. So every time I came back here, I was like, whoa. The second day I was here, I landed like, I greeted all my family, and then I went to the library, and I came back with a stack of books that I could never even finish by the time I had to go back to Jamaica again. But this was, this was also a moment for me, like the library, like here that I had grown up with, that was like so valuable to me, that every time I came back, that was one of the places I had to just check like right away. And that really anchored me as well with this place, where I was born and grew up in, actually. And anyway, so that book, so that quote was from that book, so just through that quote and through that recommendation from that lady, it ultimately opened up you know, it opened up a world to me that I had heard of before, but that I couldn't relate to it. In terms, like everything that was associated with religion, or spirituality, or like a more, to consider the spiritual side of things as well. Like I didn't have access to it at all, and ultimately, the recommendation of that lady and that book is what really opened it up. And today I can't even see myself without seeing that realm of life, of reality as well. So that's just another example of me, how how a book inspired me and opened up an entire new world.
There's actually a video that just came out yesterday from TruthStream Media. That's Aaron and Melissa Deitz, and it's entitled "And They Came for the Books." And essentially, what it
I'm
awesome.
wearing the shirt.
Wow.
Awesome. But it is rather interesting with the, one of the things that you mentioned is like a lot of the Western world, access to books and libraries is pretty profound. When you go to the third world, you find that like most cities, they don't even have a library, or they have a very minute library. And so a lot of the people in the third world don't have access to books like the first world does. And to, that makes a difference. But with this, the latest emergency, government mandated emergency, they're closing down a lot of the libraries, or restricting the ability for people to actually have real books. And there's this new kind of organization, I guess, that is digitizing a lot of the works, and they're enlisting all these libraries to jump on board. But once they jump on board, they're basically telling them that they can't. They have to restrict the digital version to like one copy at a time. So like people that are like pulling books and stuff out of libraries like like they used to do, you couldn't get a book because, of course, somebody else had reserved the book, or somebody else had, was using the book, reading the book, checked out the book. Now they're basically doing the same thing for the digital books. They're basically saying, well, the copyright says that I can't give you the book until I'm done reading it. So they're restricting books. And that little report that was just came out yesterday is something that people should be very seriously thinking about. What is going on here? Because that is an incredible restriction of information, in my
And it's
opinion,
completely
that is probably not
pointless.
going to get better.
It's pointless. Like, it's a digital copy, meaning you can have multiple digital copies. There should be no reason that you can. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of having a digital copy, is multiple people can actually check out that book at the same time, which encourages more people to use. But I guess it also doesn't give them fees either, because it's not like you can return it. Like, if it's late, they just restrict your access to it. That's absurd. I worry that that's going to put libraries out of business, because if everyone can get access to it online, then people are going to be like, well, why would I have to go to a library and get a book and take it home? Especially, hard copies. You can probably get that nasty little, stuff that's going around these days. That makes me worried about the, what's the word? How long libraries are actually, like physical libraries, are going to last in the coming future.
Yeah.
And it seems
Would be
that
a
Yeah,
shame.
they're definitely going to be a thing of the past.
Because libraries
Go ahead,
aren't.
Dennis.
Oh yeah, Dennis, go ahead.
yeah, it seems that
Go
that
ahead.
would be one of the advantages, right, of digitalizing books.
Digitization.
Just blah, blah.
Digit-
That word, the D word. We're just gonna call that the D word from now on.
Like, that would be one of the advantages, right, to make it available to everybody, at the same time, with no, you could send it via computer, and you could get it, like at the tip of your fingers, basically. So wasn't that what they used to push those kind of things, and now you're saying that, copyright says, oh no, we can only have one, so you will have to wait. And it seems something's not running as it was promised.
Yeah, and I mean that extends to even books that are like public record kind of books, that have been, they've made their, path through the supposed copywriting baloney, and now they're free to the public. And even in those circumstances, the libraries are basically being told that they can't release the digital copies in, numerous forms. To me, it just suggests that there's definitely some devious minds behind what's going on, and we've really got to be cognizant. We've really got to keep our eyes open, because this is certainly one of the things that keeps, the cognitive mind, the critical thinkers developing, is this ability to read. And to me, that might not be the only one, but it's certainly a big contributor to, the people that use their minds to, to think clearly about what is going on. And if we have less and less of those, we're just going to be susceptible to more and more craziness and stupidity.
Right, because if you think about, the action that you take, what you do with your hands throughout the day, that's inspired by your thoughts and by your cognitive abilities, right? So if you are inspired, like if you can get new ideas, like this one is a big one for me as well, the permaculture book, I think it was the first one by Bill Mollison, Permaculture Designer's Manual. That's like, wow, the the amount of ideas per page and the inspiration I get per page from that is like, whoa, hold on, I can't go through that as fast as I can read. Like, I have to take it easy and then just put do something practical with it, because that's what this like stimulates me to do. And it's like it creates ideas, and then they connect with other ideas and other things I have seen, and just by the ability to connect to ideas and to inspiration that somebody else had and was able to express that through words in a book. this is really what can transform, your life and extension, our life and our perception and our reality, because it's the thoughts and that is stimulated, our intellect that is stimulated through the thoughts and through the ideas that can be expressed through books. And if we don't, just keep in our sitting in our chair and reading books for the sake of reading books, but if we can actually the knowledge and the understanding that we gain, the inspiration that we gain through reading books, if we can individualize it and add our own seasoning to it, and then don't keep it just in the sofa or in the chair that we read a book in, but take it out, get up and, I don't know, go out in the garden or meet somebody else and discuss those ideas or do something with it and gain real life experience with it. Then that is really where the power of transformation comes in, transforming our thoughts, and through that the things that we do as well and how we act in this life.
I also wanted to point out that psychologically, when you have experienced a traumatic experience, especially the younger you are, one of the things that you kind of want to look for in a person is, do they still have the ability to imagine? Because that's the creative center is one of the first centers to go offline when you're dealing with a traumatic event, and it's actually one of the most crucial centers that needs to be on, because if you can't imagine a way out of this, if you can't imagine that things could be different, you have no hope. You have lost hope, and it will rewire the system to function without hope, and that doesn't work. When you take hope away from a person, the body sees no point in providing energy or motivation to stay alive, because there is no point. You're never going to get out of this kind of a situation.
I want to take this moment. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I want to take a moment to hail up our listeners. I see a few comments right here. Shambhavi is there, sending us a heart. Tony McCarthy is there, hailing up everybody, saying he lost totally track of time. And he says lately coffee has been his best friend. Coffee or like a cup of tea is a great thing that goes well with a good book. And
Yes.
then we have Paul Konberger there. He's asking, are we losing the ability to read? I do think so. You might be right. I prefer physical books to digital ones. And yeah, big time. Me too. Like I read a study about it, about the ability to retain knowledge and pick up words and to retain what you read. And that was saying that, and that's my subjective experience as well, that I cannot retain nearly as much if I read it on a screen than as if I read it like in a physical book. At least that's my experience, and that's some studies seem to confirm that.
I think overall, it's not really like the reading, but it's the reading comprehension. Comprehension is a skill that not a lot of people have honed very much. That's always been a skill of mine, is my reading comprehension. You can give me words on a piece of paper and I can figure out what it means. But when you're talking to me and you're giving me words verbally, my brain has to take a second and figure out, what do those words mean? How do they get put together? And it kind of puts a delay for me. So I don't know. I'm not sure if we're like losing the ability to read or comprehend it, or the ability to read. I don't know if we're losing it, but we're definitely decreasing on the comprehension of what media is being presented to us.
Well, our attention span also is much shorter than it used to be, isn't it? And if I look at the youths right now and the children, it's like, wow, like if I think back way then, it for my generation, and it's of course generalizing, which is difficult to do anyway, but it seems as if it's very difficult for especially young people today to focus, and even myself as well. Like I don't take myself out, the online culture, if you want to call it that, like watching short videos, it seems so much harder now to even like watch through an entire movie. Or if you see the plot and the play of movies today, and then also of books, it's like, wow, the amount of time that the author took like to describe the character and to work it in, and like the nuances and everything that is worked in a book is like wow. And then today is like what you watch like a 5 minute video, like a 10 minute video, and most people drop off after the first 2 or 3 minutes. And if there's nobody dies and nothing explodes like within 30 seconds, then it's like so it does that is like a huge shift, and it certainly has repercussions, of how we think. And then you mentioned the Napoleon Hill's book earlier, Michael, and what we create through that and what we manifest through that as well.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, you mentioned, the attention span. That might be a great study that maybe we can conduct or facilitate, is how much reading actually might increase your ability to focus and, increase your attention span. I think that might be a great way to like beat back the, what is actually being put in place, because people's attention span is being shrunk. And what are we going to do to go the other way? How do we expand our attention span? I think reading might be one of those key components.
Yeah, and especially, and that was my experience again, which I shared at the beginning of the show. What did it for me was that throughout the years, when I was younger and I had these frequent visits to the library because my mommy had the friend there, because it was all just there. I could go to the children books, I could go to the adult ones, I could go to, like novels, and to go into, I don't know, like all different genres with technical stuff, and then fiction. And so what was on my mind, or what stimulated me at that moment, or what excited me, I was able to get my hand on that. And because I saw all those books, I could like, I had a few hours like to choose that. That's interesting. So when I brought the book home, it was like, it was my own interest. It's like something excited me about this and I wanted to read it. So it was not somebody else who told me, or it wasn't like a limited thing, maybe like in a small bookstore, or what was available on the shelf at home. But it was because I had this wide array of things and I could pick it myself, and I could, choose to get excited by it or not. And then it became something individualized even before I started to get into the book, because it was something that excited me. And I think that that level of excitement is really stimulating, and that's what encourages us also in the long run to go and look out, in life of, what kind of what people, what environment is exciting to us, what stimulates us, and to create like maybe a feeling for what is right for us in that moment. And also the excitement of life of, there's so much out there. Like if I can see all of this in front of me, what is, outside, what's in the next library, what's around the corner, what comes tomorrow. And that excitement of life, I think that's something, maybe even needed even more so today, where people are locked up in their homes, and are just, being taught to look at the tube and look straight ahead, and they can't, we're not even turning our heads again and perceive, I don't know, the sunset and what's going on with our neighbors.
I wanted to kind of take this conversation back to the attention span, because there's so many things I love about this. It's called the Inheritance Cycle series, but the Aragon, I call it the Aragon series because most people who read it know what I'm talking about. I had a problem with that, where I would read one book, and then if the second book had different characters, I'd get really frustrated, and it'd take me a while to like get back into a book and understand things from a different perspective and change it. I liked a set, like knowing what was going to happen, and I also liked to just get more and more information on that topic. I didn't like to switch topics, which my attention span didn't want to juggle multiple characters at a, it wanted a set of characters, and then that set of characters are the only characters that I have to deal with. This series, and I'm going to show you, this is the second book, which is about the average thickness. I don't see many young adults, even younger than that, reading books like this. I see them reading small, thin books, and those are great too. I have quite a few of them. But, when I was growing up, these were the series. This was like, yes, I have like a whole 6 months worth of reading material to do. The funny thing about this series is it's high fantasy, so there's lots of magic, there's dragons, there's dwarves, and it's like a Lord of the Rings, but I wouldn't say better, because I actually love Lord of the Rings, but it's just, it's very similar kind of background. And you get 3 books in, and all of a sudden the main character of who they're writing about switches from the dragon rider and the dragon and all this magic to his cousin, who is still back at the very beginning, where in the same place that Aragon left from, and his mundane adventure of crossing all of this territory without magic, without help, and just doing it on his own. And that series really taught me, one, patience, of there must be a reason for this, and it was in the final book they all conjoined together, and it's a super complex plot line. But it taught me a lot of patience, and it taught me that I need to learn how to juggle my attention span. I can still, part of my brain still wants to see what that character is doing and what, I want to know the more about this story, but I have to get through this. And I can't I wanted so bad just to skip through it. And then I kept reading, I kept looking through, and I realized that almost the entire book was about this one character. So in the middle of a 4-book series, there's just one book that's not even about the main characters that you get really used to. I really enjoyed this as a young adult because it taught me the value of patience and the value of determination, like actually putting your mind to something and then finishing it out, even if the middle kind of seems a little rough or not enjoyable. That was the biggest thing that I got from this series.
Nice.
What came to my mind was also, we're talking about books. So, books that we only talked about books that we read. What about books that we wrote? Did any of you write a book yet?
I'm in the process of it.
What about you, Mike?
I've tried to do that a couple times. I actually did get some short stories published, but yeah, I still have a ethical emergence book to get completed. That's certainly one that I want to do in the next year or two for sure.
Nice. And I was reminded of the journaling process, that you shared with us, from when we started with Raising Excellence last year. And I thought, maybe that is something that it's like, oh God, writing a book? No, I can't write a book. But if you get into the habit of writing a few lines, not to write a book, but, to journal every day and to write on your thoughts. And so I think that is like maybe like an easy access, or like, it's like a low, how would you say, like a low threshold entry into writing and into forming words and sentences and getting your thoughts out. And maybe if you look over the stuff you wrote, like after a month, after a year, or maybe even after 10 years, then you get inspired to put them together in a certain way, or that will do the process of writing. I think even if it's not for others but just for yourself, it does something that is more than just putting down words. And it's very powerful. And I'm very thankful for you, sharing that journaling technique with us. And maybe we should do like a little recap, or like, put a little reminder here and there again, just to keep that up to speed. But I was thinking about that, not only reading books, but also writing books. And that certainly is an ability that each and every one of us can do. Once we can form words and can express ourselves in writing, that is certainly a good exercise, even if it's just, for our own sake, and developing that
Yeah,
ability.
absolutely. Absolutely. When it comes to reading, you should also be writing, and that's kind of one of the things with the journaling thing, is the idea of writing regularly. It is, there's just so many benefits to doing that, to understanding what your vocabulary is, how to spell words, what are the true meaning of words, how do you use words. Those are all things that come from reading and writing, and there's just so much benefit that comes from both of these things. That is certainly one of the reasons that I advocate for journaling, is because it is just such a good habit to have. There's just so many positive things that come from it. But yeah, great point.
What excites me also, and that would account for books, for quotes, and even for music, you know, if you think about people like, let's say Bob Marley, like who wrote songs many decades ago that still hit home today, and that still, you know, you can connect to today because they were written in a way, or quotes or books that were written in a way that, although, you know, there might be years and years back that they were written in a completely, it seems, different time and different, you know, environment and reality, but still people were able to put down words or to sing words that, you know, they cut right through it, and they cut right to, you know, our humanity, and that we can connect to. And I think that's something really powerful, you know, if you can get down to the essence of, you know, of life, of what that means to us. And if it's, you know, if all the outside things basically, you know, can just fall off, and you can talk to, you know, people in the future through what you are expressing right now, through what you have found, and give value to them in that way.
So what you just said reminded me. I had one more quote from the series, and it fits perfectly here. I use this day to day. Like I think of this quote every day when I'm wondering, am I going in the right direction? Am I doing the right thing? Am I just in the right? Am I going in the right direction? Sorry, I'm a little repetitive. Uh, so the quote says, "Whatever you make, base it upon that which is most important to you. Only then will it have depth and meaning. Only then will it resonate with others."
Definitely agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just add to the what Dennis was saying in regard to reading books that come from different eras. There's a couple books that I've read recently: Alfred Korzybski's *Manhood of Humanity* and Albert Schweitzer's I think it's called the *Decline and Restoration of Civilization* by Albert Schweitzer. Both of those books are written in the 1920s, and they describe kind of a very similar situation to what we see today. And that a lot of people are saying, why is humanity going down this crazy path? You know, and shouldn't we think about which way we're going and maybe choose to do do the better thing than the worst? And those two books, I think, really kind of, and to me, I think Korzybski's book in particular is so easy to read and understand. And even though it's like, 100 years old, it just seems like, wow, it's so, it relates so well to what's going on today. And it's really about, really a different understanding of what the true nature of human mankind is. And to me, that's a very powerful and influential book that I definitely so glad that I stumbled upon, and I certainly have Autonomy to thank for it, because that's where I discovered it. It was one of the graduates that that is in Autonomy recommending that book. But we definitely have the opportunity to look back in time and find out that not everybody was in the same boat. That there was different times in the past where we had choices to be made, and unfortunately the choices were made in the wrong direction. And we've got to see that. We've got to be able to see that, to understand that mistakes have been made, and we can correct those mistakes by understanding what went wrong.
Also reassuring, right? Like if you actually find out that the same feelings we might have today of, you know, the end of the world and everything collapsing, that people before us, you know, long, long time before us, had actually the same notion, and we're going through, you know, similar turbulences. And so it's something, you know, that can help us to center uh, ourselves in those times as well, because we know, wow, it's not the first time that people perceive that. And although it might be dire, but, you know, we have made it through as humankind, so to say, many times before. And so maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And you know, what are current times asking us to do? You know, how should we position ourselves? What should we do? What is life asking of us? Because certainly things are not happening apart from us, but they're happening because we are part of the whole that's going on. So there must be, something to it. It must be a call, and maybe like it's a loud call, and it's all, all lights are on and flickering. It's like, wow, so we should probably, wake up and see what we also can do to facilitate a transformation to a higher level of living together, right? And books, at least from my point of view, and I'm sure you're sharing that, can have like a tremendous role in altering our perception of reality, and also of giving us the ability and the knowledge that, wow, we have, there's so much power within ourselves, and maybe only have been using a fraction of it, and books certainly stimulated me and continue to encourage me to, to go look outside, who is there and what is there else to discover, and what are the blind spots, that I have been overseeing, what is the knowledge that I have been lacking of, and it creates excitement for me, excitement for, a better future for all of us.
Willow,
We
any
had-
concluding statement?
Well, we had one more comment. Tony McCurdy says, I started doing a video journal type thing a few months ago after watching your So You Think You're an Anarchist videos. But then I didn't prioritize it, and I kind of put it on the back burner. I have watched a couple, and yeah, it definitely helps keep me focused. I definitely need to start doing it again. So I think that's a shout out for you, Mike.
Oh, wow.
I also
Wonderful.
wanted to give
Thank
a
you,
shout
Tony.
out to one of our commenters, Paul Kuhnberger. Actually, him and his wife are the ones who gave me this copy of this book, because I told them that story and they thought it was adorable. So they had a copy in their house that they were getting rid of, and they gave it to me so that now I can sit on a porch with cars that actually drive by and look like a smart person. So thank you
Awesome.
for giving me that book.
Awesome. So I guess we're at the end of our time. Certainly thank everybody for their time and attention, and watching and listening and commenting. Certainly appreciate all that. Hope this is very helpful and useful to you. We are doing our shows on Mondays and Wednesdays, 5:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 2:35 Pacific. And we will be back on Monday. Do we have any idea of what we're going to be presenting on Monday?
No.
It's just another surprise.
I'd also like to congratulate Dennis and Dennis in particular for running our show today. He seems to be getting much better at this as we go along.
Yeah, we didn't have
How are
any
you feeling?
issues.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I hope
Nice.
the beginning was good as well. It seems that, maybe there was some issues with some technical issues at the beginning of the show. I hope everybody was all right, and yeah. But thank you too, and thank you to my beautiful wife, who, without whom this wouldn't have happened.
Definitely.
For sure. And yeah, so I can only take a fraction of that. But yeah, getting there, and another proof of, what's possible if we work together, and yeah,
Absolutely.
where we can go if we strive for raising our excellence in every way. Wow.
Okay, I guess we hit the out button at this point and say so long.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody, and bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.